to the CEO Wisdom Podcast. I'm Charles Cormier, 50X founder, 3X Ironman, 5X dog dad, and husband. Each week, we extract actionable insights from the most innovative minds in business. Ever feel that knot in your stomach during the workday as you stare at an empty pipeline? While others burn cash on ads or wait months for SEO results, my clients generate 30 plus qualified leads monthly using a simple podcast system. No experience required. For just 1.7 grand, you can access the same framework that's delivered consistent results for 3 years straight. This isn't about becoming a famous podcaster. It's about having targeted conversations that fill your calendar with sales calls. Visit podpire.com to see if you qualify for this limited opportunity. Now let's dive in with today's guest.
So I'm today's guest. I just wanted you guys to see the HeyGen AI built intro. It's pretty cool. So it's a replica of me, an AI replica. HeyGen are the first to do it at scale, right? With not ridiculous prices like Synthesia. I wanted to start with that because today we're going to talk about podcast lead gen vs AI cold email. I think that it's a very important topic because a bunch of you will try AI cold email with an agency. It may work if you work with like the very best out there, like I don't know, 30K a month agencies, but it won't scale as podcast lead gen will. And I'll explain why in this video today. So first, what is podcast lead gen? Podcast lead gen is a cold email that you send and you invite someone to an actual podcast. So, hey, John, I'd love to have you on my CEO Wisdom podcast. Can I send you more information? Once John sees that emails and write yes, that's the normal reply most of the time, you send them a full template of your actual podcast. So here are our criteria. Here's what to expect. Here's the timing. Here are examples of the podcast, for example. And at the end of this email, there is a link to book a podcast. They book the podcast, and keep in mind that John is your ICP, it's your ideal customer persona, a tip-top prospect for you, right? So it is the best methodology to attract prospects and clients and deals at scale. And I'll explain the why today. The main why is quite simple. AI cold outreach, which I did and still do nowadays, right, for some specific campaigns, tends to be very good. We use AI snippets. We may mention their ideal customer persona in the email. Hey, John, I've seen that you're targeting healthcare companies making 50 mil a year, for example. These highly personalized emails, they're good, but they require deep expertise in AI, which most don't have. Via a podcast funnel, my podcast emails, they have zero AI into it, but the offer is so good, right? Because the acceptance rate, yes, it's about personalization, sure. It has the first name, it has the company tag, it has the industry tag, but it doesn't have any complicated AI stuff, right? So it's so simple. Anyone can do it. As long as you take your contacts, for example, from Apollo, you warm up with Instantly, and you send through SendGrid's API, you will get an amazing open rate. And daily, you're going to see leads. Daily, you're going to see leads on Instantly. And yeah, for that reason, people accept a podcast call with you. You run your podcast just like you would run a discovery call, right? Like asking people about their business out in the open. The interview is public, of course. I like doing them live. And after the actual podcast is done, then you earn the right to pitch them. There's a door that's opening for you to actually pitch your prospects after the podcast. Why? Because trust has been established. And yes, the full podcast call is not just a sales call, right? In which you're asking them questions that is relevant for your own sales process, right? Like how many leads you get, what are your growth objectives this year, do you have a provider for blah, blah, blah. It's also like sheer curiosity, right? So this system, it does really well for founder-led sales. Founders are naturally curious. They're naturally good at selling, quote unquote. What's the best salesman like? They're great question askers. They're great listeners. They ask follow-up questions based on the information that they just received. It's a perfect flow of conversation. They're high EQ, high IQ, right? So when you get these people on a podcast, ask them some question and really get that deeper connection with them, you earn the right to pitch them. Of course, there's always a couple of assholes out there that will be like, hey, don't pitch me, unsubscribe me. People that just don't understand that you gave them 30 minutes of your time, right? Because it's a gift. That's what a podcast is. It is a gift of your time. If you're a great question asker, odds are that it will be like their first, their second, or third podcast. It's experience for them, and also no one will sit down and listen to these busy CEOs and founders. These are my favorite audience, by the way. This is applicable to pretty much anyone, but I love staying in the very high levels of B2B if you're starting a podcast, right? And this is fully scalable because once you have someone building these systems for you, the SendGrid stuff, the instantly warm up, and so forth, the copy, and I mean, if you're adventurous, if you're technical, you can do it yourself. But once this is done, it's a one and done thing. So it's constantly rolling and it never stops. So every day you wake up with a mailbox of like 5, 10, 15 leads. VS, if you would go with an AI cold email approach, even if your offer is good, you constantly need to reinvest time into it and reinvent the AI wheel. Oh, what will be the approach that time? What will be the personalized introduction that time? It's always about spending your energy into it. And guess what? Most people aren't technical. They don't know how to go on Play or Persona and prompt an AI to deliver a specific amount of information. And if they do, I mean, you will get errors in your prompt. You will get errors in your outputs. You may send that, and guess what? Someone might flag you as spam, right? It is very, very, very rare that you get flagged as spam for podcasts. Why? Because the offer is so good. People would feel like dicks if they would just flag you as spam, right? I've observed, by the way, last week, because my LinkedIn profile has been suspended for a couple of experiments, that having a great LinkedIn profile helps a lot to for people to book, right? They will check you out online. The question also I get often is like, why would they accept to be on my podcast if I have zero podcasts? Well, it's the same question in the 0 to 1 field in startups, right? How do I get my startup off the ground if I don't have money, if I don't have clients? It's like the chicken and egg problem. And the response to that very simple question is not philosophical, it's not rocket science. It is to fucking start, right? You will send out emails, and some people will be crazy enough to accept a podcast. And guess what? Most of them aren't crazy. They just want to have a first podcast experience. You will create content for them for free, and they can take that content, they can feed it to an AI to cut it themselves, and it's better than anything else out there. There's no AI that will interview them as of now and create that content for them. There's no like clear solution. So the podcast way is still the best way to go forward. Now, you may ask, why would I spend time building a podcast? I'm not a podcaster, right? Like that's not me. I don't like my voice. I don't like, I'm like introverted. Well, guess what? I'm all of that too. You know, like I am introverted. I didn't like the sound of my voice when I started in sales. I thought most podcasters were losers, except a couple at the top, like GLD, Andrew Warner, Joe Rogan, and so forth. But that quickly changed once I discovered that question asking is the number one skill in our times. It's even hard for an AI to ask great questions, right? Like great follow-up questions and so forth, although they're getting pretty good at it. By the way, if you don't know what question to ask, you can just feed the profile of your guest to GPT, and GPT will come back with 10 fancy questions. The better your prompt, the better the question. And yeah, I discovered I could generate at least 30 podcasts per month. In my case, nowadays it's like 100, and close 10% a month, right? So this quickly became like, I feel stupid behind the mic, and this is silly. I have like 3 subscribers on my YouTube channel, which is where I post my podcast, by the way, to holy shit, that's 80% of my clients are coming from that funnel. It's pretty like it's no nonsense approach, right? And I compare that with my AI outreach approach and so forth. I tend to be a man of extremes, right? I love testing systems to their extremes, which is why my LinkedIn got suspended. By the way, I test a lot of things for my clients so that they don't get their accounts suspended, for example. And more on that later. I can share some lessons with that. But my AI outreach, like yeah, at some point it would be flagged as spam, right? And I'm an expert at this. I actually have all my AI outputs validated by other AI layers to make sure that they make sense, and my human brain, of course. And I still would get people flag my email as spam. Why? Because people don't want to be pitched. Why? Because I haven't targeted them the right way. It's very hard to always target the right people, right? Like you would literally need, in an ideal world, go to every single profile one by one. Most people don't have that. It's always a time, energy, money ROI equation in my head, and I mean, someone in there is gonna flag you as spam, right? If I don't spend my time reviewing all of these 1,000 contacts, so and I don't have time for that. That's literally like an hour. So I found that the podcast thing, not only I've got like fun doing it nowadays because yeah, I'm working on my brain and growing neurons at the same time, connecting with cool people and making dollars off AdSense. I'm having sponsors sponsor me. I'm getting leads out of this, and of course the guests they reshare to their audience, and I'm getting a bunch of free followers doing that. So just because of that, it's like what activity can yield even better results at this point. And I'll give you a guess, there is none. So what I geek out on nowadays is really improving that system, improving my podcast systems. That's the number one thing that will yield the most money over the short term, the medium term, and the long term. For example, I've shown you an AI intro today. And yeah, you'll see the outro, which has always also been built by an AI. These will yield like big benefits for me because people constantly reshare the results of the podcast to their audience. And let's say that just 1 or 2% are buying from me because of these things, which I invested like literally an hour in doing. And that's great. The conversations also there's something to be said about conversations as what's aligned with our AI age. You know, like people want to have conversations nowadays with a chat GPT, and humans are getting very used to the question and answer framework. So like it's a nice experience. I had a guest on my podcast explain it well because he's starting his podcast, following like all my content and so forth. He's like, have you ever spoke to someone that after your podcast didn't have a great experience? It's very rare. Like I leave all of these CEOs and these founders with like top energy, top inspiration, and so forth at the end. And like I said, there's very few that will sit down with a CEO and founder like a psychotherapist would and ask them deep questions, right? About fulfillment, about energy, about their day to day. Someone that will give them attention and interest, right? As CEOs and founders, it's super lonely. So I think for all of these reasons, it's still like a very strong thing to do, and the number one activity any CEOs and founders could invest their time into is like showing their own personality out there, increasing their authority, right? And really building a solid moat. Like the human relationship thing, it won't go away anytime soon. If you build trust like a year ago and you come back to someone like 2 years, 3 years in the future, they'll remember you. Now, there's always like the 1% loony rule, right? There's anyone you'll interview in any space, there will always be the 1% crazy that will be like, hey, why are you following up on me and so forth, right? But I mean, you don't want to work with these idiots anyway, so it's glad that that you discard them. Like some people are just ungrateful sons of bitches, right? There's also like that type of human on this planet Earth, and that's fine. That's okay. That's part of the game. But the highest level people, they will give back, right? And that's my theory of filling the glass. Like if their glass is half full of value and you fill it up to the top, once it overflows with value, they will give back value to you. And that means they will buy your product. Now the close rate on that method, as it is like less based on scarcity and like pushing people to the edge, is only 10%. is not like 30%, but what I found out over the years, right, running a cold email agency and being neck deep into the sales world, people exaggerate their close rate all the fucking time. They also exaggerate their sales cycle. It's very rare that someone will have a 30% close rate. The funniest thing ever is like I used to talk to prospect that would be like, I have an 80% close rate. Like, who are you selling to? Your fucking dad and your mom? Is that like your and your sister and your brother? Is that like who you were selling to? Then for how much? Is your offer like $15? So yeah, like people and humans are really good at making up numbers, right? Right, because smart, dumb people, they don't know how to use numbers, right? But people that are somewhat getting smart soon, they learn to use numbers to manipulate people. Like that's like the second level. And yeah, up we go in the intellectual scale, but like people do that nowadays. If you think about it, you do 10 podcasts and you close 10%, that's like one client after you've invested 200 minutes of your time. 200 minutes, that's like 3 hours, 3 hours and a half or something like that. It's very good. And yeah, this system is made for high ticket, right? Like I don't think anyone, I think consulting, high ticket consultants are still like one of the best business models nowadays, because you can invest that money in other side businesses and slowly but surely grow your empire. I think, high ticket consultants is like one of my favorite clients. I also work with investor founder hybrids and so forth. Agencies also in that category. Crypto, AI founders, also some of my best clients. But yeah, if you apply this framework and you target CEOs and founders, I think it could be a very high ROI for you to do this instead of going for AI cold email. Like AI cold email is the only way in which you can scale leads and get a bunch of leads nowadays. Just one last point here. What I've really discovered last year after generating like a shitload of leads for my clients, some of them like more than 100 leads per month, is that it's way more than just like lead gen. If you dig deep enough, like and find the root cause problems in companies, leads is just like surface level bullshit, because most of them have a crap product. And crap product is ultimately gonna justify and determine the close rate, right? And it's also gonna determine the retention rate, how many people are gonna come back and buy again from you, which ultimately is having a business, right? Like if people are not coming back, you don't have a business. You have like some kind of forever stuck in selling modes business, which I had, by the way, many times over the last decade as an entrepreneur. And yeah, basically, if you do have a good offer, people will say yes. Like podcast is a good example of that. But then what do you offer on the back end, right? Like me, for example, I offer podcast as a service, offering lead gen as a service, right? Hey, 30 plus leads a month, guaranteed. And that's a good offer. Although like there's a bunch of competition out there that offers something similar, and most of these folks are full of shit, right? Like me, it's 30 leads in a month. That's pretty good. Most of these people is like, or what I did back then with my outreach agency was like 10 leads in 3 months. That's way too fucking slow, right? And we're just not out of the woods. Anyway, I'm glad I cracked that part. But what I'm saying is that offers are dependent on so many things: the competition, the perception of the offers. Like, hey, everyone is pitching me that nowadays. I don't trust you, right? Then is like low hanging fruits, right? Low ticket, not pitching them like a very high ticket product off the bat, and also like aligning directly with their behaviors. For example, me on the back end of a podcast, I shouldn't pitch them necessarily starting their own podcast. They accepted the podcast offer, right? So what does that signal? What's a very strong signal for that? Is that they want to be booked on podcasts, right? Is that they want to be booked on other podcasts. And maybe I shouldn't even talk about starting their own podcast until they gave me money for booking them on 10 podcasts, like 150 each. That's my best offer, right? And then once they become clients and we're meeting on a weekly basis and we're becoming friends, then they trust me to open their mind up. Hey, John, sure, I can continue booking you on podcasts, but as you've noticed, you don't have control when you're being interviewed by someone. They could be shit. The podcast could be very short. It could be not promoted to multiple platforms. There's all kinds of reasons why they would want to start a podcast instead of being invited to one. So then I'm like, John, I know that what you want from this is leads. I know that you don't have a lot of time, right? So let's just start your podcast. I'm going to take all the details into my hands. All you're going to need to do is spend 20 minutes a day on a podcast with someone. Okay. And you're going to interview them, and I'm going to create some follow-up pipelines after that. All the publishing process will be automated. All you'll need to do is step on a call with them. Imagine it's a sales call, John, right? And we're going to close 10% of that. So offers are also about ladders, and there's multiple steps of complexity that tends to change in time, is what I'm saying. And a lot of people, they don't obsess over their offers nowadays. They're like, hey, here's what I do, and you prospect, adapt to me. But what I've learned in the last couple of months is the complete opposite, right? It's hyper nerding on offer. How does one hyper nerd on offer nowadays? It's with ChatGPT. You feed responses that you're getting, statistics and feedback, qualitative, quantitative, to a ChatGPT. Me, it's called Offer GPT, and I can share it with you, the prompt and or the link to it. And once that Offer GPT actually builds a good enough offer, and you've tested that offer, and you're getting like a crazy 65% reply rate to the, hey, I can book you on 10 podcast offer right after the podcast is done, right? Then you know that you've hit like a nerve there. And just like everything, product market fit and $100 million offers, they're moving target. You constantly need to change it and adapt it and be attentive to feedback. And that's why I'm saying that attention, that question asking is the skill of this century, because you really need to pay attention to the person, what they're saying, how they're saying it, their intonation, their body language, their flow, and convert that into data, chat with ChatGPT about it, and make sense out of that data, right? And question asking is very much about being in the present, listening to someone. And these same questions, guess what? You can ask them to ChatGPT, and the better your questions to ChatGPT, the clearer the answer. So what I'm saying here is that questions and answers, they go hand in hand. And the better you are at questions and listening to answers, and the better you get at questions. So it's like a never ending stairs to PMF, stairs to product market fit. And yeah, just that for itself should be a reason for you to do a podcast, right? And after 2,500 podcasts, I cannot say that I'm the best at asking questions. That's still something that I'm learning. So yeah, that process, you can stack it, and it becomes like a lifestyle to interview a bunch of these people on your podcast. People are not catching up to this. Why? Because it's somewhat complex. And believe it or not, like this is quote unquote complex, which shows how brain depleted most people are nowadays, and always chasing something that doesn't fucking exist. Hey, get me leads. Hey, AI agents, I'm gonna hire you. Guarantee me 10 leads. Complete waste of fucking time, because yeah. And then there's a bunch of factors, right? Like in the lead gen game, how quick are these leads answered? What's the actual reply when they say yes? That's probably 10% of my stack, AI cold emails, but 90% of it is the podcast stack. And this one will take you so much farther, so much more in a scalable future, right? Like a future in which you'll get a constant amount of leads, when very long sales cycles, like someone that you spoke to 200 days ago, 400 days ago, is actually closing. Believe it or not, I've gotten that, right? And this is truly scalable, meaning that people that come in my pipeline, my full strategy and master plan, I've revealed that a couple of times, but just to make it clear, people that I work with, Yes, I'm extremely attentive to retaining them. Like that's my next step, and that's my full focus this year. Like retention GPT. Although I feel I've cracked the offer, got out of these woods. My full Charles master plan is to work with these clients that I very much love and invest in their business and get equity in their business. And that is my very long term investment strategy. That is going to get me at least to, I don't know, let's call it a $25 million net worth in a decade from now, assured. And yeah, if I'm lucky, 100 million. And with the stack and my constant obsession on improving that system, I'm pretty sure that can get me to at least 1 billion. And that is like foregoing all my other strategy, right? Like starting XYZ startup because I'm an AI nerd and so forth. So very bullish on that strategy. And I feel more people should implement that. I still feel that, ICP in my case, like I haven't found my very ideal customer persona, although like I'm more there than like 98% of the market because I'm nerding out on this, but I'm feeling nowadays like high ticket consultants, right? And AI founders, like I said, crypto is hot as well. So I do have a quote unquote no fit at that level. But the offer side, I'm pretty presently winning on that aspect. I've got lots of good data. So it's a very complex system. It's a multifaceted system. It's a long funnel. It's another philosophy, right? Most agencies just about retention. I want to invest in my clients and partner up with them. My goal is to work with the best brains of this world. And yeah, somewhat have achieved that with a couple of clients last year, which I'm really proud of. This model requires 0 employees. By the way, it's fully automated, fully systematic. I let go of most of my employees some time ago and was the best move I ever made. Completely changed my mood as well as an entrepreneur. So yeah, AI outreach still effective, but not as effective as podcast funnel. Even if you hire the tip top guys out there, even if you work with a great company with a great offer, right, which is very rare, you would be better off starting a podcast, getting data of your guests, talking to your ICP, talking to 5 to 10 of your ICP on a daily basis. You think you know them, but you don't really know them. You haven't asked them the deeper questions, right? You haven't followed up with them. There's so many good offers that you can offer after the podcast is done. Plus all the subscribers and the content that you'll build. I mean, this is a no-brainer. So hope I added value here and somewhat made sense. The podcast funnel is to be A/B tested at least. And yeah, I offer like a 1.7K get you started in an hour and a half program that is usually 5K premium, but here it's low ticket 1.7. You don't get like the full coaching, but you do get like a quick podcast setup, right? Which will get you 30 leads a month. So that's what I have to quote unquote sell here. I don't work with anyone. I want to work with businesses I can see like myself investing and invested into, right? So if you're like a tech company, if you're AI first company, if you believe in an AI agent future in which most companies will stay small and scale pretty much forever their customer base through being smart and not outsourcing to silly humans, reach out to me and I will set you up 30 leads a month. And then the 10% close rate on that one, on that program, we don't do the follow-ups, right? The follow-up system that's helping you close 10%. You will get a guaranteed 30 leads. But we will follow up on WhatsApp, and I'm always eager to add more value. So check us out, podpire.com. And yeah, reach out to my personal email, charlescormiercoaching@gmail.com if you think this is great. And yeah, I'm going to drop you the link to everything that I mentioned here. On the newsletter, I often speak about these things. So yeah, next newsletter, you can find me on the AI Builder, and I'll drop a full newsletter about everything that I discussed today. So peace out, guys.